Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today's episode is absolutely packed. We're talking about The Division 3, a wonderful early access from Creepy Jar, Manor Lords creator shares bold statements around AI, and Ubisoft is shutting down a major studio in Halifax. If you enjoy news from the game dev world, hit the like button and subscribe. Alright, let's get into it. Ubisoft has officially confirmed that Tom Clancy's The Division 3 is in development, and for fans of the franchise, this is a big moment. The Division series has always been Ubisoft's attempt to mix looter-shooter gameplay with a grounded, near-future political thriller. The first game was set in a snow-covered New York, the second in a crumbling Washington, DC, and both leaned heavily into atmosphere. But The Division 2 launched all the way back in 2019. That means The Division 3 has been quietly brewing for years. What's especially interesting is that Ubisoft Massive, the studio behind The Division, was also working on Star Wars Outlaws and Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. That raises questions about resources, priorities, and what kind of Division game we'll actually get. Division has always been one of Ubisoft's more expensive franchises to maintain. Online infrastructure, seasons, raids, and post-launch content. It's not a cheap game to run. People online seem to think The Division 3 is likely being designed for something very different than Division 1 was. It is being said to expect heavier live service systems, more monetization, and probably a tighter seasonal model. Not because players want it, but because Ubisoft needs it. The question is whether they can keep the atmosphere and immersion. The Division was always a great addition to gamers' player catalog, and I hope the third installment will only continue the great streak of the series. Next up, Creepy Jar, the studio behind Green Hell, just released their new game into early access, and it's mind-blowing. Rupture is a surreal, unsettling survival experience that leans heavily into open-world base building. It's not trying to be a blockbuster, it's trying to challenge you. And what's fascinating is how much early access has become the go-to model for studios like this. Early access isn't just about funding anymore, it's about testing ideas in public. Creepy Jar is essentially saying, we think we know what this game should fully be, but let's test our theories and we want you to help us make it better. That's risky but also powerful, because open world builders especially live and die by player reaction. If something isn't working, the devs need to know fast. Players' reviews on Steam are mixed. However, I can see a hopeful pattern of players' creative criticism, which I'm sure will help the devs in one way or another. And while Steam Early Access success doesn't automatically translate to stock market fireworks, Creepy Jar's financials tell a compelling story. The company reported strong projections for profit and revenue growth in 2025, beating market expectations and reflecting confidence from investors ahead of the launch. Clearly, the anticipation around Rupture and the initial buzz from players has contributed to increased investor interest in the studio's prospects. This is indie development at its best. Not chasing trends, but building something unique and fresh and letting players shape it. Now let's talk about something that's been rocking parts of the game dev community, and that's the conversation around generative AI art. The publisher behind Manor Lords, indie label Hooded Horse, just made some very pointed comments about generative AI in game development. Their CEO, Tim Bender, said in a recent interview that he fucking hates Gen AI art and believes it's cancerous to the creative process. And as a result, Hooded Horse has written a strict no AI asset clause into every publishing contract they sign. That means if Hooded Horse is publishing your game, no generative AI produced art will be allowed at any stage, even for placeholders. They're telling studios not to use AI tools at all during development because there's always the risk that AI content could accidentally end up in the final build. This stands in stark contrast to how other major publishers are approaching AI. Some are actively exploring it for concept art, prototyping, or even in-game assets. Others have more nuanced policies, but Hooded Horse is taking one of the strongest possible stances, a blanket ban. This has sparked a much wider industry conversation about how, or if, generative AI should be used in game creation. For some developers, AI is a productivity tool. for others, is a threat to creative integrity. Hooded Horse's approach is basically saying, if we're involved, it's human art or nothing. That's a bold line in the sand, and one that's reignited debate about what artistic ownership and craftsmanship mean in games today. And finally, some of the most controversial news of the week. Ubisoft has closed its Halifax studio, laying off 71 employees as part of broader cost-cutting and restructuring efforts. While the company insists this move was planned as part of a longer-term efficiency strategy, the timing has raised eyebrows across the industry. And here's why. Just weeks earlier, the Halifax team had completed the process of unionizing under the Game and Media Workers Guild of Canada, becoming the first Ubisoft studio in North America to do so after several months of effort and a strong majority vote. When employees walked into work one morning to find out the studio was shutting down, many were shocked and devastated, especially coming so soon after achieving official union certification. Former staff has said the gap between the union vote and the closure announcement is questionable at best, even if Ubisoft maintains the decision was made well before unionization. Ubisoft says the closure is part of a company-wide initiative started over 2 years ago to streamline operations, reduce costs, and focus on core franchises, a narrative the publisher has leaned into repeatedly. But unions and labor advocates haven't accepted that explanation at face value. The Communications Workers of Canada, which represents the Halifax Union, called the timing outrageous and stated it will pursue every legal recourse to protect workers' rights and ensure nothing improper took place. This episode underscores a broader tension in the games industry right now. As developers push for greater workplace protections and collective bargaining, some of the largest publishers are simultaneously cutting costs, restructuring, and reassessing how they allocate resources. With unionization and gaining visibility and momentum, this situation in Halifax has become a flashpoint for discussions about worker rights, corporate restructuring, and the future of game studio labor. That's it for today's episode. If you want more honest, developer-focused game industry news, hit subscribe, because there's a lot more coming. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.